Hi, it's Kristen and welcome back for part 3 of our beginner quilting series. So we have been walking through all the steps on how to make a quilt. I started from the very beginning, and then in the last video we talked about actually quilting it. So we put our lines on our quilt in the last video, and this is the final video. We are so close to being done with our beautiful quilt here. We are going to be binding our quilt, which is where we add that pretty little piece of edging. I'll show you on a quilt that I've already finished. We trim it up and we add that beautiful little trimming to the edge, which just finishes the quilt off so nicely. So as you can see, we still have the unfinished edge. We have our backing is like sticking off of there. It doesn't look very nice. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make our binding using our 2.5 inch strips from the jelly roll that we use to actually make the quilt. And then we're going to sew it on. It's going to be so fun. A lot of people worry about this part, putting the binding on, but I'm going to make it so simple for you. You're going to get it for sure. So if you would like to see how to finish off the quilt and put the binding on and all of that, then keep watching this video. If you're enjoying this series, I would love it if you would give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe down below so you don't miss any more quilting tutorials and all the fun DIY inspiration I have here on my channel. All right, without further ado, let's get to binding. So for this one, we are going to be using our leftover strips from our jelly roll. So that will give us a really cute kind of scrappy edging, and it will match perfectly. So all you need to do at this point is just pull out whatever ones you want on the edge. So I'm gonna do this one, and we need 4. So I'm gonna do that one, which is like a darker one, that one, which is a lighter one. Let's see. I'm gonna do this pretty blue, and let's do, how about this pretty floral one here? All right, and now this one. So I'm gonna use those 4. And what we're gonna do is we need to make one long piece out of those 4. And so this is how we're going to do that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just cut the selvage edges off. So to do that, I just line up my pieces so that the selvage edges are kind of matching. And then I just get my little ruler. Anyone will work. And we just want to do a nice straight cut just to get rid of that selvage. You could do multiple of these at a time if you want. It's up to you. Okay, I think I might. So get those selvage edges off. So to reduce the bulk and to just make it look a little bit nicer, we are going to make an angled seam. So we're gonna take our pieces right sides together, just like this. And we are gonna sew here, and then we're gonna cut the seam, and when we open it up, we're gonna have these connected. So what you can do, since we're doing this for beginners here, we are gonna mark our seam and we're gonna pin. You don't have to do this, but it helps. It helps just to make sure that things stay straight and aligned. So I'm gonna use my little ruler here and get my, get the 2 points lined up to get a nice little diagonal line, just like that. So that will just help me to see exactly where I need to sew. And I'm going to pin it just because, like I said, this is for beginners and we're trying to keep things as simple and mistake proof as possible. So we'll just sew right on that line and then we'll trim a 1/4 inch away just like that. And while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and connect this piece to the next piece. So you can see me do that again. Right sides together, just to line them up. Just like that. And then get that just right. And pin. Try to pin out of the way of your where your presser foot will go, so that way you don't have to remove the pins while you go. You could just sew straight. All right, and we're gonna do the same thing for all this last piece. And I'm not gonna draw on this one. I'm just going to put the pins in because I know that I can keep a straight seam, but by all means, draw if it helps you. All right, now we're gonna take this over to the sewing machine and just do a straight stitch all the way down. All right, we're lining up with our little line here and taking it easy. Don't need to go fast, just take it slow and get right on that line so we have a nice, clean join there, seam. All right, I'm gonna take off these pins. And then I'm gonna trim a 1/4 inch away from this seam here. Can you see that? All right, and then when we open it up, we have the two joined together very nicely like that. So when we put our binding on, it'll be folded and that'll help distribute the seams a little bit so it won't be as bulky, and that'll be a nice, simple little join there. So we're gonna do that for all three. All right, now let's take this over to the ironing board and get it ready to go on our quilt. All right, we are ready to iron. I'm gonna trim these threads off, and I'm going to iron these diagonal seams open. So first we're gonna set our seam like we've talked about before, which is just a simple press. And then we're gonna get that seam flat. And go ahead and press it open. Just like that. Oops, I missed a spot. There we go. I'm gonna get any wrinkles out while I'm here. Just be careful while you're doing this. You don't want to distort your fabric. Make sure you're not stretching it and pulling it. I accidentally cut this one a little bit shorter than 1/4 inch. So I'm actually just gonna press this one to the side. It's gonna be hard to get that one to open up. All right, and we're at our next seam. So we're gonna set that seam. And then open it up. All right, so we have it all pressed and all our seams are nice and flat. So the next thing we're gonna do, again, this is a 2.5 inch strip. We're gonna fold it in half for our binding. So that's the next part. So I'm just gonna line up those little pinked edges, which are the little mountains. And I'm just gonna press. And we're gonna go all the way down, pressing it in half, nice and neat. Right, so it's time to go ahead and put our binding on. So I like to start like a little bit more than halfway up my quilt. So just pick an end, whichever end you want to start with. And this is what we're going to do. We are going to line our binding up with the edge of our quilt. And I like to leave just a little bit of the actual quilt top sticking out there. So instead of, you know, covering the quilt top completely, I just like to let a little bit peek out there. And then when I sew just slightly inside of that. So it's about, it makes it about 1/4 inch from that edge. And this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna sew down the whole way. And I'm gonna show you what to do when we get to the corners, and I'm gonna show you a cool little trick to make kind of tucking in the binding a lot easier. I'm gonna show you that over at the sewing machine. So after we do that, and the binding is all on, we're gonna bring it back over here and we're gonna trim it. So we're gonna trim down the edge, so we'll get rid of all of this. And then we will fold this over and finish sewing it on the other side. Okay, so let's go over to the sewing machine and get started. All right, so we have it all set up at our sewing machine. I am using a 2.5 stitch length. And just like I showed you, I'm tucking off the edges a little bit, and this is the unfinished edge of our binding. Okay, that's what's gonna go up against the top of the quilt right here. Now here's the cool part. I'm gonna show you a little trick that is gonna help us with finishing off our binding. It's gonna make it a lot easier. So the first thing we're gonna do is take this piece and kind of open it up a bit. And we're gonna fold it at a diagonal like that. So it touches, can you see that? So it makes like a little triangle in the corner. And you'll see after we get to the end how this creates a little pocket for the other end of our binding to fit into. So I'm just gonna put my presser foot down here and go ahead and put my needle in, and we're gonna sew along this edge, and then I'm gonna pop this up and continue sewing it down so we have a little pocket here to put the other piece of our binding in. I find that the pins are too fussy at this point, so I think it's better to just adjust as you go. So I'm going down, making sure to catch that part of the binding here. And then I'm gonna actually back up a little bit. And fold this over back to the way that it was. Tuck it in. And I'm gonna go back over it and create that little pocket there. Okay, and then I'm gonna readjust and make sure that a little bit of the quilt top is poking out. And then I'm just gonna try to keep it as straight as I can and about 1/4 inch away from the edge. All right, as we get close to the edge here, some people get intimidated by the corners, but you don't need to be intimidated. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. So we're going to continue stitching until we get about a 1/4 inch away from the edge of our quilt top here. So I'm going to keep stitching slowly until I get about a 1/4 inch away. Okay, then I'm going to pull the needle up and slide this off just like that. Now to make our really pretty corners, we are going to take our binding and fold it back just like that. I like to kind of crease it a little bit with my finger, and then we're gonna fold it back forward the way it was going. So make sure you hold that. You want it to all line up, so you want this edge to line up with the quilt top here, and then you want this edge to begin to line up with the quilt top down here. So do you see that little fold that we just made? It's not sewn yet, but you can see how that looks. See that? And then we're going to rotate our quilt. Let me get my thread out of the way. Rotate it. I like to keep a good hold on my little fold that I just did there to make sure nothing happens to it. And then get everything back lined up again. Get my presser foot a 1/4 inch, or my needle a 1/4 inch away from the edge. Drop the needle in. We're just gonna sew straight across, just like we've been doing. And I'll show you that corner again from another angle when we get to this edge, just to make sure you can see very well how that works. So I'm just gonna line it back up so I can still see a bit of the quilt top, and we're gonna keep going. Okay, there's my 1/4 inch. Pulling up the presser foot and the needle. All right, here is our corner. All right. And try to get you guys nice and zoomed in here. All right, so here's our corner. We're taking our binding, we're flipping it this way, just like that. So we have a nice like angle going this way on the corner of the quilt. Holding that there, then we're gonna rock it back the other way, keeping this fold right at the edge, and then making sure that this raw edge is now lining up with the bottom of our quilt for us to be able to continue our binding, right? So let's rotate the quilt just like last time, holding on tightly to the little fold that you made. All right, just like that. And then we're gonna get our needle set up, 1/4 inch, put it in, and then we just start to sew again. All right, so here we are. We're back to where we started. You see our little pocket that we created here. So this is where we're going to tuck a little bit of this excess, but we do need to trim it. So I'm gonna trim it down just like that, since there's a little bit of leftover, which is great. You don't wanna come up short, right? So we're just gonna tuck this into the pocket. Try to get it as flat as you can so that there's not very much bulk there when we turn it. So see how nice and flat that is? Tuck it in, and then we're just gonna sew this basically together all the way down to this seam. And then when we roll it, we'll have a nice angled seam there, which will look really good. So let me just adjust the quilt a little bit. You don't want there to be excess sticking out. Like, you don't want it to look like that, right? It needs to be tucked as far in as it will go, nice and taut. And yep, just like that. All right, we're just gonna sew. We're gonna go a little ways past just to make sure everything's all connected and good. There we go. And then I'm gonna backstitch a little bit too, just for good measure. Perfect. And that is it for that part. So we can take our project off of the sewing machine. And now we have the first part of our binding done. Let's take it over to our table. We're gonna trim off the edges and then come back to the machine and do the final step. All right, look at our lovely binding. Isn't it so pretty? So now we need to go ahead and trim up the edges of our quilt. So I'm gonna use my large Creative Grids ruler here. So I'm gonna use my ruler. I'm just gonna line it up on the edge to try to get a nice square, get it nice and square and even. And I like to go just barely, maybe like 1/8 of an inch beyond the quilt top or the binding. So I'm not trimming the actual binding. I'm not trimming the actual quilt top at this point. I am trimming the batting at this point. And so I just kind of adjust, get it just so. And with my rotary cutter, I cut, holding it down carefully as I go. So we're just gonna do that around the entire thing. So I just slide all the way up to the top. Just try to line it up and make it even, just like that, and we cut all the way to the end. And you can save this batting or you can toss it. I like to use it for things like little quilted coasters and things like that. I think you can also like stuff pillows with it too. So I just put it in my scrap bin. All right, let's turn the corner. I just love the way this has turned out. Love the colors. So pretty. All right, and I'm just gonna do this around the whole quilt, and then I'll meet you back here and we'll talk about flipping the binding over and finishing it off. All right, let's go ahead and get our binding ironed flat. So your corners are gonna look like this. Just go ahead and flip them, and you're just gonna do a quick press there, nothing major on the corners. And then we do not want there to be pleats, so just pull gently. And we're just trying to get this flat to make it easier for when we flip it over and finish the binding. So do that on the whole quilt. All right, our binding is pressed flat. Let's take it over to the sewing machine and finish it up. All right, we are on our final step. Let's fold our binding over. Just like that. And we're gonna place it under the presser foot. So we just want to catch the very edge of our binding as we go around. So just be careful, just line it up to where your needle is gonna catch just the edge. You wanna make sure you catch the edge though, so just pay close attention as you're going. But we're just gonna stitch all the way around just like we've been doing. Take it nice and slow if you need to. You can kind of pull it through if needed. It shouldn't be too thick for the machine. It should just go through just fine, as long as you're not catching the other side of the binding, which is not, we're trying not to catch the other side of the binding. We're trying to just make a little stitch right down here that will hopefully just kind of fade away and no one will notice. So right on the edge of this, And then when I get to the corner, I'm gonna show you how to handle the corners, and then we're just gonna wrap it up. Okay, when we're a little ways out from the corner, I like to stop. This is where something like, this is called a stiletto. This is where something like this comes in handy, is when we're trying to get these really pretty nice mitered corners, okay? So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna use our little stiletto, or you can do it with just your fingers if you want. I just find it helps so much. So I'm gonna press, basically we're trying to get a straight, like a fold straight from this corner. So I'm just pressing down, and then I'm gonna fold this up just like that, and that is how we get our pretty little mitered corner, just like that. And we are going to continue just catching the edge while holding our mitered corner here. Again, this is where the stiletto comes in handy. You can kind of hold it as it goes through, and we just want to come just a little ways in. I'm gonna backstitch a little bit, I went a little far. We just wanna come right to the edge of our binding again. I'm gonna leave my needle down, lift my presser foot, and then rotate my work like this. And then we're gonna fold the binding again. And we're gonna continue just as we were. Put the presser foot down. Continue just as we were, catching the very edge of the binding. All right, I'm going to show you the corner one more time. Fold just like that. And we keep going forward on the edge. Use the stiletto to hold it in place. We don't want to go very far. We just want to make sure we catch that. And then lift our presser foot up, leave our needle down. And we rotate and we keep going just like that. And we're going to do that all the way around the entire quilt. All right, you guys, we finished it. Look how pretty. I love the way it turned out. I really hope you enjoyed this beginner quilting series. I hope you had fun making this very simple quilt, so beginner friendly. I think it turned out really, really cute. So I hope you enjoyed following along, and I really hope you will try out quilting. It is so much fun and just something I've gotten into recently and have been enjoying so much. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't see the other videos in the beginner quilting series, I'll have them linked in the description box down below, as well as up in the cards, and there's a whole playlist with all of them on there and all my quilting videos. So make sure you hop over there, check out all the other videos. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.